Well, hello, I'm Doug Apple, back with another special interview for you today. What is the American dream? Now, you may have an idea what the American dream is. I have an idea what I think the American dream is. And then when I see something like we elect a socialist mayor for New York City, and I think, some people must have a different view of the American dream than I do. And we're going to talk with Mike Sharman. He's sitting up in Virginia. He's the legal counsel for Share Healthcare, the nonprofit Christian healthcare sharing ministry, which we'll talk about later. Or you can find more information now at sharehealthcare.com. But what is the American dream? And what are the lessons that we can learn from November 4th and November 12th? Now, you might say, what happened on November 4th and November 12th? Well, we're going to turn to Mike Sharman for that, and he can unpack this and talk to us a little bit about the American dream. Mike Sharman.
Well, thank you, Doug. Yeah, November 4th was the election. In Virginia, we elected our statewide reps, the governor, the lieutenant governor, the attorney general, and then all the members of the House of Delegates, which is the same, like, say, the House of Representatives in Congress. That's our House of Delegates here. We had 100 of them that were up for election. And then it was also an election in New Jersey for the governor, and the election, as you mentioned, in New York City for the mayor. So November 4th was the election. And November 12th was the day that the Senate and House had finally come together and were able to break the deadlock on the shutdown. So what were the lessons that we learned or need to learn from November 4th? What was the lesson that November 4th was trying to teach us? And what was the lesson that November 12th was trying to teach us? So in a very short thumbnail sketch, my view of what the lesson of November 4th was is that everyone still wants, our electorate, we the people, the American people, still want the American dream, but they have different ideas of what that, how to get there. That they don't believe the system can still get us to the American dream, or they don't think that it's possible for them unless they do something really radical, like bringing a socialist, an avowed socialist, into New York City, or those with socialist policies here into Virginia.
Now, Mike, do you think that we, the people, still have basically the same or similar American dream, or do some people just have a whole different dream?
No, I think everybody, I think the whole world still has the American dream.
Okay.
And what is that American dream? What do we look back to see that, well, in the 50s and 60s, it was possible to live out the American dream? What was that? It was the ability to get a job that is a job that's worthwhile to become a career. Now, a lot of people can just walk down to McDonald's, Chick-fil-A, Five Guys, and get a job flipping burgers or making chicken sandwiches. That's a job. But is it worth becoming a career over? Well, perhaps not, or perhaps it is. I was just chatting with someone the other day who had they had only worked at McDonald's their entire life, had worked there 50 years, but was now the CEO of a major group that owned many McDonald's. Well, they turned that little burger flipping into a career and liked it. The same with Chick-fil-A. Somebody might start off at Chick-fil-A when they're 16, and by the time they're in their 20s or 30s, they own one of the franchise. And if you get to be one of the franchise owners of Chick-fil-A, it's like winning the lottery. Because you don't have to pay hardly anything for it, and it makes you an instant millionaire. So that might be it. Or the job might be that you have an apprenticeship that then becomes a good career. Whatever it is, that is the first step in the American dream. Being able to get a job that is worth having as a career, that you're going to want to do and like to do for your entire life, and that you can feel at the end of it that you've left something worth leaving. You've left a legacy. I mean, that's a major part of the American dream. And then as part of that, at the beginning stages of that job becoming a career, building your legacy, at the core of it really is the desire to marry. Now, we're almost in a post-marriage culture, but that's because people really have lost the ability, have lost belief that there really can be a good marriage out there. But there can, and it's our job to be teaching people that. But they still have that desire. They want to marry. They want to create a family. To do that, though, I mean, how is a person going to feel like they can raise up get married and have a family if they have to live in their mother's basement? So part of the American dream is the knowledge and the ability that they can buy their own home, that they can bring their wife to, that they can build their family up in, and that it can be the home. You know, here out in the country in Madison County where I live, people are always talking about the home place. They either live in the home place that they inherited from their parents, or they go back to the home place that had been the parents and grandparents. I mean, we all want that home that is a core issue. I talked to a number of people now who, as I'm helping them out with their different legal things, they will say, well, we're selling our home that our children are grown up in, and they're coming back and visiting it for the last time. Those type things are core to the vision of the American dream. We want to have a job that can become a career. We want to be able to establish a family. We want to be able to put that family into a good home. And then we want to be able to look toward retirement without fear, that we can feel like, okay, we've built during our lifetime, and we've been able to build up enough to have it be a comfortable retirement for us. Now, the problem with the November 4th elections is it was reflection, and we really need to take stock of this, that the people did not believe that was possible for them to accomplish anymore with the existing systems, with the existing politicians in place. So they were willing to throw them all out. So that was one of the major lessons of November 4th. The desire for the American dream, have a good job and career, be able to marry and have a family, have your own home, plan for retirement, those things have not changed. The belief that it's possible under our existing protocols, under our existing political system, is what has been lost. And yet, it hasn't been lost everywhere. You know, in my state of Virginia, in the Commonwealth of Virginia, the election was only determined by a few small, heavily populated areas. Northern Virginia, Richmond, and our beach area. That's it. The rest of the area voted in the complete opposite percentages of those. So, for example, in my county, we voted 80% for the Republicans, 20% for the Democrats. 80% for essentially those that are proposing the American dream in the standard way, and they weren't believed, and those that were proposing it in a very radical socialist way, even though they were not saying they were socialist. You know, we'll give you this, we'll do that, and also the shutdown that had not terribly coincidentally had begun right about the same time our early voting was beginning here in Virginia. That wasn't a coincidence. How do I know that? Because the Democrats that were proposing it were saying that. So that was one of the big lessons of November 4th, is remember, people still want the American dream. Present it to them. Present it to them and let them believe that you also share that with them, and you're going to work for getting that to them. You know, forget all the political gobbledygook. Forget the messages about progressive or conservative or Democrat or Republican. Skip those labels, because the voters really don't care about those. The ones in the middle don't care. You're always going to have the core that are Democrat Party to the core, and that's all they're ever going to vote for, no matter what, no matter who the person is. And you're going to have those who are core Republicans. They're going to vote for that no matter what the label, no matter what. It's that group in the middle that you're wanting to look for. The crossovers, the independent, and the youth who haven't settled on which party they are yet. That's what this is for. And it's that group in the middle that did not believe that the existing people, the existing systems could get the American dream for them. And that was true up in New York as well. The message for November 12th, November 12th is when the House made the final vote ending the shutdown. Well, what was the shutdown over? Remember, the vote was on a continuing resolution package. Well, the name itself ought to say what we're talking about. Continuing. This is just a continuation of what had been done before. Resolution of what Congress had already resolved before. Well, what was the issue at stake? Well, everything that was in that continuing resolution had already been voted on by this Congress earlier this year, back in the spring. They'd already voted on this exact measure earlier and passed it. And what they had passed earlier this year was what had been proposed. It was a continuing resolution itself, and it came from the Biden administration. So these Democrats were opposing something they had voted on during the Biden administration and then voted on again during this Trump administration, and now they were opposing it. Well, why? Because they said that they wanted to make sure that the folks didn't lose the enhanced subsidies under the Affordable Care Act. Okay, so what are the enhanced subsidies they're talking about? Well, there's about 22 million people that were awarded during COVID the ability to get subsidies for their health insurance or health exchange, which had not had that before. Well, who had it before? Well, those of under 400% of poverty level. Who gets the enhanced subsidies? Those over 400% of the poverty level. Well, what's 400% of the poverty level? Well, it's $62,000 for a single person, just a single person, or $128,600 for a family of four. Okay, so the fight was over whether these 22 million people that are in families that make over $128,000 ought to get subsidies for their health insurance. That's what the fight was about. Well, why were they going to lose these subsidies? Well, because during the time when they voted on this during the COVID era, all the Democrats had voted for this to end December 31st. They'd already voted on it. So what's the lesson of November 12th? We had 43 days of a government shutdown, which caused enormous hurt, not just to the people who weren't getting paid, but for all those that were affected by it. I mean, there's court cases that were stopped because of it. The Supreme Court had to stop so much what they do because their staff was not getting paid as well. So what's the lesson of November 12th? Well, two lessons. One, do hold the line. Don't let yourself be extorted into doing something that's contrary to your principles, which you know is right. So the Republican base and those Democrats, those few Democrats that voted with them, did hold the line. That was good because it worked. It caused a lot of pain, but it worked. That's one of the lessons. The other lesson is don't get blamed for doing the right thing. You have to communicate well. If you look at polling, more people blame the Republicans for the shutdown than the Democrats. But the Republicans were just trying to do what the Democrats had already voted for over and over and over again. And remember, until they finally made this workout, they were only asking for it to be continued to November 21st. And as part of the deal, they now got it extended to January 30th. And so hold the line. Yes, that's a good thing. That's a lesson from November 12th. And then communicate it well so that people understand that what you did as being good actually is good. Now, let me use my wife Nancy as an example of how to win those lessons, how to win those battles on November 4th and 12th. So my wife Nancy has always been, as she says, a professional volunteer. She's, I guess her biggest volunteer area was for the National Day of Prayer. She first was our county leader, then the state leader, and then she was the national coordinator for the eastern states, 6 states in Washington, D.C. And so, those big volunteer programs, et cetera. Then we've also been, political. And so she was always getting people to run for office. She would identify them, encourage them, help them with it, help them with their campaigns, et cetera. So we had somebody stepping down from the Board of Supervisors in our county, and the Board of Supervisors is, like a lot of folks states have, is they're the ones who run the county, set up the budget, set the ordinances, et cetera. And so we had encouraged somebody before to run, they had, and they were stepping down from that seat, and so Nancy was looking for somebody else to run. And people kept telling her, well, why don't you? Why don't you? Why don't you? So she asked God, and he said, yep. That she got definite confirmation of that. Her message, her theme that she had in her campaign was prepare the future, preserve the past, which is about as good a bumper sticker phrase as you can have for the American dream. And she was telling people for our county that what we want to do is we want to try to help build up the people within the county and help them be able to have a way where their children and their grandchildren can stay in the county and be able to have a good career, to be able to buy a home there, to be able to raise their family there, and to be able to look toward retirement there. She presented that American dream. And even though, she's very clearly a Christian conservative and is that way, we did not have any negative politicking against her during her campaign. And she won a very solid majority. And the person who had been on the board for 10 years as chairman and 12 years total, 10 years as chairman, that person who was also running, they were multi-seats up, he didn't win. And he had not been a bad chairman. But what did that tell us? People want something different. And yet they still want the American dream. So Nancy did both the November 4th lesson. You have to get involved. You have to be willing to do the work. You have to be willing to run for office if need be. But definitely keep presenting the American dream in a way that your group, your family, your church, your community, your county, your state will understand. And so she did it in a way that was understood by our county. Prepare the future and prepare the future, protect the past. And that was understood very clearly. Prepare the future, protect the past. Because that's what our folks understand as the American dream. It might be phrased differently in different areas, but that pretty much encapsulates it. And she was able to achieve the lesson of November 12th. She held her line. She didn't give up any of her principles at all. And yet she communicated it in a winsome way that had people want to vote for her, regardless of what their political affiliation was. So how else can somebody out there do this in the meantime? How can they help their family live out the American dream? How can they begin having the culture take it on a little bit more so that the culture is shifting step by step? And I think in at least a small way, that's how Share Healthcare can come into play here.
All right. Well, tell us about it.
Well, Share Healthcare is a 501c3 Christian ministry, a nonprofit, and its specific ministry is to help Christians share one another's medical expenses. So remember, the big deal about the shutdown was that the Democrats were saying, well, we have to keep giving out these subsidies for people of $128,600 and more. Well, why? Well, because healthcare is so expensive. Well, it's not for people in Share Healthcare. In Share Healthcare, it's $149 per month for a single, $249 for a couple, $349 for a family of four. Well, how does that compare to the rest of the healthcare world? Well, the average for an employer-provided health insurance for a family of four is $2,600, $2,600 per month versus our $349. So in that difference between $2,600 and $349 is either a good solid part of somebody's mortgage or maybe the whole mortgage, definitely what they can be doing to build toward that, being able to prepare for marriage, get the home, support their family, put it into retirement. I mean, the difference between $349 and $2,600 right there is that ability to achieve the American dream and do it in a way that fits with godly principles. Because we are Christians helping one another. That's what God wanted us to do. You know, our verse, so to speak, our life verse for Share Healthcare is Hebrews 13:16. But do not forget to do good and to share, for with such sacrifices God is well pleased. Well, we want to please God. And so that's why we don't share in abortions. We don't share in abortifacients. We don't share in the transgender destruction. We don't do those things that would offend God. And as a result, we're blessed. $149 for a single, $249 for a couple, $349 for a family of four. And it all fits with those lessons of November 4th and November 12th. November 4th, present to people the American dream in a way that they can understand it and accept it, and they will go along with it. And November 12th, communicate it in a way that they can understand and believe and accept. And so that's what the members out there of Share Healthcare can do in talking to their friends and family. That's what people who are talking to young couples or young people who want to start living the American dream. Well, what can I do? I can't afford a house. I can't afford an apartment because I have to pay for this insurance. $149 for a single. Well, we just got married. I don't know how we're going to be able to save up any more for our house or to prepare for a family because we're spending so much on insurance. $249 for a couple. Well, we want to have, my wife be able to stay home and take care of the kids. We want to be able to expand our family and have more, but how can we possibly do that? She's got the good insurance, and with the amount that it's paying, there's no way we could give that up. And $349 for a family of four. Those are how we can begin stepping toward changing the culture when we're able to see the body of Christ has so many innovations, has so many tools that we can use that will solve each one of our social ills. We're hearing right now healthcare is one of the biggest one of those social ills. Well, here's the cure. Now, all we need to do is just step into it.
So to wrap up our time here today, Mike, if you still have a couple of minutes, I would like for you to kind of give me an audio chart of the difference between how a conservative, put that on your right column, I guess. How does a conservative at least think he's helping people get the American dream? What is a standard conservative view of helping people get the American dream? And then on the left side of your chart, how does a classic liberal think that he's helping people get the American dream? If, like you said earlier, everybody really does have the American dream of wanting to have a good job that can turn into a career, wanting to be able to get married and have a family and a home, and then, pursue happiness on into retirement.
Well, true conservatism would be, let's get government out of the way so that you can raise your family. Let's get government out of the way so that your business can operate. Let's get government out of the way. And the progressive or liberal viewpoint is, how can we have government help us? Conservative, let's get government out of the way so that you can live the American dream and live it to the fullest. Liberal or progressive, let's help government. Let's get government to help you live out the American dream. I mean, that's it in a nutshell.
And so how do they do that then differently? Because, for example, you said your wife ran in order to help people, but usually a conservative isn't trying to help simply by, having less government. I mean, you'd think
that is actually what she was doing, is how do we remove the barriers that will allow you to have a business in your home? How do we remove the barriers so that what you're doing here in this county of living here, but you work outside for somebody else, how do we help you create a business here so that you can live and work in the same county? Because we have very much a commuting county. So it was very definitely telling people, how can government help you to help yourself? The difference is really a Blackstone view for conservatives or a Marxist view for liberals, progressives. So Blackstone had said that, the law of nature and nature's God. That's what Blackstone phrase was picked up and put into our founding documents. So the law of nature that Blackstone said is that in nature, where there was no government, each man was a government of himself, and he knew his property was his property. He knew his right to his bodily integrity was his right. He knew his right to raise a family was his right. And he began giving up some of those rights when he got into society in order to have security. So that's what we have in our Declaration of Independence, that we're all endowed by our Creator. He put us into that natural state. We're all endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the governed. Okay? That is the conservative viewpoint. We have rights that were given to us by God. Everybody has them. And it is the only purpose for government is to secure those rights for the governed. And the only way the government gets its power is by the consent of the governed. So watch out who you consent for. Now, the liberals and progressives have forgotten that Blackstonian viewpoint that we've incorporated and put into our Declaration of Independence, and then also encapsulated within our Constitution and our Bill of Rights. They've forgotten that and taken the idea of wants to be needs and needs to be rights, and that's the Marxist viewpoint, and that government should control the means of the economy. And what so many people looking on and say, well, that doesn't seem so bad. They forget the fact that Marx said that socialism was just an intermediate step between it and communism, and in between socialism and communism was necessarily supposed to be a time of anarchy and chaos in order to have enough anarchy and chaos that people would agree to take on communism as their rule, because they would have to try to start controlling all this anarchy and chaos that was occurring. We are at the socialist stage right now where government is providing people so much. And that viewpoint of, well, but I do want to have my own home. I do want to have good health care. I do want to be able to raise my family. I do want to have them protected. I do want to be able to provide for retirement. Well, people have translated and bought the politicians' lie that those wants are now rights. And government is the only one that can provide you with the cure for those rights, the response to those rights. Well, no. That isn't the case. We have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which means we all have the opportunity to bring our God-given talents and our abilities to pursue the happiness that would come from a marriage and a family and a home and good retirement. But we got to work for it. You know, those are the distinctions there. And hopefully I answered your question, Doug.
Yeah, well, it's quite a distinction. I like that phrase, the pursuit of happiness. And when you talk about government getting out of the way, it's like clearing the road and then keeping obstacles out of your road, like other people stealing your stuff, for example.
Correct. And being respectful to everybody's desire for the American dream, keeping clear in our minds the proper way of getting to it and how it should really be fulfilled, but being respectful of those who have a completely different viewpoint. And again, just praising my wife, that's what she was able to do during her campaign, whoever she was talking to. She would hold the line on her principles, but she'd be very gracious in her talk to people even when they disagreed with her. It's going to be fun to see what she does on the Board of Supervisors, because when people get up to that microphone during the public comment period, they can be unpleasant.
Yes.
But, she's very good at being able to have a winsome phrase to those that disagree. And that's what we all need to be doing. That also is the legacy that we keep hearing about Charlie Kirk.
When is she sworn in?
Well, it'll be in January, and we haven't gotten the exact date that she'll be sworn in. She's already, this whole year, she's been attending the meetings of the Board of Supervisors to be able to see what are the current issues, et cetera. So she's already got the calendar and the rhythm under control. And, she knows the people and the players and the issues, but they'll be changing. The particular issues will be changing, of course, the whole time. But the bottom line issue doesn't. People want the American dream. They come to the Board of Supervisors wanting more money for the schools. They come to the supervisors because they want a little change of zoning for their property to be able to do something with it. On and on and on. They come to the Board of Supervisors wanting the American dream and either wanting government to get out of their way so they can do it, or wanting government to
do it.
The answer, right, to do it for them. That's right.
Well, Mike, back to the topic of Share Healthcare. How can people find out more information about that?
Well, probably first go to the website, sharehealthcare.com, sharehealthcare.com. Look it over, write down your questions, and then call 1-844-SHARE-HC. And if you call during business hours, you're going to get a real-life human who'll be able to answer each one of your questions.
All right, so 1-844-SHARE-HC, and sharehealthcare.com is the website, helping you to live out the American dream of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That is Mike Sharman talking about the American dream. And for Wave 94, I'm Doug Apple.